Blessings and peace be upon you all. I salute you wherever you are. I get often asked by some Muslims and religious people, did Big Bang really happen? How do we know that it happened? So in this video, I will be talking about the story of Big Bang, how it came to be, and how it was proven as a scientific fact. Today, Big Bang is accepted as a scientific fact. And with Big Bang, what we mean is that the universe was extremely small, or it started as a point and then expanded out with all the matter and energy in it, put it very simple terms. Well, until about 1920s, there was two main assumptions about the universe. The first assumption was that the universe was as big as Milky Way. And that was worked out to be about 100,000 light years. In the end, you saw stars, nebula, gases, and things like that in the sky using telescopes. And there was even a big debate in 1920s because people started to doubt this. People started to say, are there other what they call island universes? The term galaxy did not exist at the time. The word for galaxy was island universe. So there is this famous, they called it Great Debate, the Shapley and Curtis debate in 1920, where each side argued, no, Milky Way is the only universe there is. The other side was arguing, no, there is galaxies or island universes beyond Milky Way. Well, how do you prove this? You need actually proof. So the first proof actually came with Edwin Hubble, who was working with this new telescope, the biggest telescope at the time, 100-inch mirror telescope on Mount Wilson. Edwin Hubble made some discoveries that the closest galaxy to us, the Andromeda galaxy, he figured out how to calculate its distance, and it turned out to be about 2.5 million light years. So the universe was bigger than Milky Way. So overnight, our idea of the universe rapidly expanded. So this was the first breakthrough. And the second, but by then in 1925 or so, it was also discovered that some galaxies were moving away from the Earth or from us. So in 1927, a scientist who's also a priest, by the way, Georges Lemaitre, proposed this idea that if everything is moving away from us, then going back in time, they must have been in some single point. And this was a dramatically new idea. And when he actually proposed this idea with his mathematics, to Albert Einstein in a meeting, Einstein said, your math is great, but your idea is preposterous. Einstein believed in a steady state model, that the universe doesn't change, it's eternal. And actually Einstein himself, when he discovered or came up with the theory of relativity, his famous equations, his equations of relativity predicted an expanding universe. He actually put in an extra term, called them lambda, to fudge really his own equations to produce a steady state model of the universe. He later regretted that was his biggest blunder in science. So by 1929, once again, Edwin Hubble comes to the equation, and he looks at and discovers that not only every galaxy is moving away from us, but also the more distant these galaxies are, the faster that they're moving. This actually proved that the universe was expanding. And Lemaitre's argument for that theory, or we now call, at the time it wasn't called Big Bang, became more real. But there was still opposition, and chiefly this opposition came from Fred Hoyle. Fred Hoyle was a brilliant scientist himself. He actually showed that the atoms the elements that we have, like sodium, iron, oxygen, and carbon, these were all created or made in stars as the star was evolving towards the end of its life and exploding in a supernova. So these elements were forged. So that was a great discovery in itself. We're actually ourselves are stardust. The atoms in my body, on my clothes, were once in a star somewhere in our galaxy. It's very mind-boggling, that one. But Fred Hoyle couldn't explain one thing. Why is there hydrogen and helium in the first place? Because you could explain every element, but how do you explain the existence of hydrogen in the first place? And this is where George Gamow and other scientists came up. He actually shown with mathematics and calculations that if Big Bang theory was true, it could actually explain the existence of hydrogen and helium. The fact that helium could be made in stars, but there was just too much helium in the universe to be explained by stars only. Actually, 98% of all the matter, all the atoms in the universe are hydrogen or helium. So there had to be something, another event that could create hydrogen and helium. And he actually worked this out. He worked it out that in a Big Bang was hot enough to produce hydrogen and helium. And he also worked out that this would happen 380 years after Big Bang. The universe would cool enough to collapse, the electrons would collapse onto protons to produce the first atoms. And he also predicted that that would create the first light in the universe. At 380,000-year-old universe, this flash of light would be produced, and that radiation, he said, would still be detectable now. It would cool down remarkably because the universe is old, but it should still be detectable. Fred Hoyle once again objected to this, and in a radio interview, well, what do they think? Do they think that the universe is created in this Big Bang? He was trying to make fun of the theory, but that word Big Bang came from Hoyle himself, and it got stuck in 1949. So the main smoking gun came in 1965 when two scientists, Arno Penzias and Robert, I always forget their name, Robert Wilson. These were two scientists. They were doing some tests in this big horn antenna. I'll put the image of the antenna on the video. They were doing some different tests, but wherever they pointed this antenna, they picked up this noise they couldn't get rid of. They even cleaned the antenna from bird droppings and swept it, check all the instruments, but there was this constant radiation coming from all directions. And this was exactly as predicted by Gamow. It was 3 degrees above absolute zero, which is kind of like minus 270 degrees now in Celsius. But this was actually picked up. Now, ironically, when you open your analog TV, you see that noise. That is the first radiation of Big Bang. Now it's detectable on your TVs. Now we now have a map of this radiation. It's very important. It was measured by a satellite telescope, and I will put an image of this, the baby universe, on this video, that background radiation. Notice that in this image there are blue and some red areas. The minute variations in that, it's kind of a millionth of a degree. It's very small variations in that early universe. Scientists believe that those differences actually ended up being galaxies as we know it. So Big Bang theory is a proven fact. There are 3 main proofs. One is that the universe is expanding. If it's expanding now, if you go back in time, there must be a point where it was all together. And secondly, the existence of the helium and hydrogen that we observe in the universe can only be explained by a Big Bang. It has to be very hot. That kind of temperatures doesn't exist even in stars. It can only be created at the moment of that Big Bang, the creation itself. And thirdly, which is the most important one, the proof that there is a background radiation. Now we can detect it 13.5 billion years after the Big Bang itself. It's amazing to think that we can measure that. So we are all made from stardust. The atoms in our bodies were made in stars, and stars themselves, the fuel for the stars, were made in this Big Bang. We now know how the universe was created. It definitely had a beginning. Does it have an end? That's another question. So I hope I will do another video that talks about, does Quran talk about Big Bang? Surprisingly so, it does. We'll find out in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.